Hey everyone, welcome to another van update. In this episode we're going to be talking about all the updates that I've done since the initial van build and what I've changed and added on since. So I've got a long list, I've got them on my phone and I'm just going to be reading them off as I go. I'm going to be working from the front of the van all the way to the back and then we'll go outside and underneath the van. So the first things first, back last year at the end of 2019, I was working on a solar farm, and on the way back home for R&R, I was on the way back and my van motor seized up and it was catastrophic. I was like stranded in the middle of nowhere, I had to get a tow truck and everything. It was a really bad time. So yeah, I ended up getting the van towed all the way back from Coonamble and Burrabrun in New South Wales all the way back to Brisbane in Queensland. So that was pretty costly just to get it towed. And then eventually I got it towed to a mechanic in Brisbane. He was a really good mechanic. I'll link him here. And he actually replaced the van engine with a second-hand Mercedes Sprinter engine. So the engine I've got on now has 100,000 Ks. The original one had around about 230, so it's much less. He also replaced like the clutch, the starter motor, and a bunch of other like smaller things that makes sense when you do an engine replacement. You change little things like that. So also previously when we were living in Sydney in 2018, I had issues with my turbos. I won't go into the full story, but I had trouble with Mercedes. I ended up taking to like a third-party European mechanic. They actually ended up replacing the turbos, so that was pretty costly as well. And since then I have bought a scan tool, which I highly recommend because at the time I didn't have one, but I have had the vehicle goes into limp mode since replacing the turbos, and I've plugged in my scan tool and it's basically saying that exhaust back pressure fault. So when I actually got the engine replaced, I got the mechanic that did that to have a look at that, and he just replaced the sensor. So I don't even know if it was the turbos, but I might have been reamed by the mechanic, but yeah, that was just a bit of an experience. So that's what's happened in terms of mechanical and big things. It was pretty pricey and I hope it doesn't happen again. But I'm glad that Sadie's running all good. She seems to haven't had any problems since, and touch wood that it stays that way. So firstly we'll go up to the front, and I'm just reading off my phone because I've got such a big list here I wouldn't be able to remember it all. So firstly what I've done is added these little racks here that hold extra room. I've added that fire blanket there, and on my side I've added double racks as well, so that's really handy because we can take that stuff out of the kitchen area and put it up here and store it up here. Laurie's also added some plants, some succulents. I made that little wooden plant holder down there, so that's a really nice add-on that Laurie insisted on, and I've actually grown to like having it. And the succulents are doing really well in this desert environment as well, because that's where they really thrive, as long as we water them every day or two. So moving on, actually I have tightened up this front door flap. After a while they were getting really loose, so we tightened them up, had to redo all that, Laurie and I. That wasn't too hard of a job, but since then they haven't really had any problems, so we're happy with that. Alright, next is, I'm not sure if I had this in the initial build, but there's this towel rack, and that's been there for ages. You might have seen that already, but that's really handy just to hold our two towels. And next is this little whiteboard that we've recently put on. It's magnetic, and that's handy. We just put a bunch of stuff on that, and obviously we've got all these Polaroids, and we're going to hopefully fill up the whole door eventually of our travels. Another thing is this fridge thermometer that I bought while we got into Alice Springs because it was getting really hot, so that just shows you the ambient temperature inside the van, and that's what's in the fridge right now. It's pretty hot right now, it's a hot day, but I have noticed that if you do move the little thermometer around in the fridge, sometimes it isn't accurate, so depending on where it is, it might give you a false reading. So 9.5, I think that's a false reading, and when it's near walls and stuff, it doesn't like it. You need to have it like in the center of the shelf, so that looks like a false reading to me, because normally the fridge sits around 4 degrees, 4 or 5, maybe 6 on a hot day. And you might have already seen this one as well, but all these hooks here, they're really handy. We hang mainly just like tea towels and hats and all random stuff on. I'm thinking of adding another one here so that when we have a shower we can just hang our towel here, and then when we open the door we have a towel right there. So next we'll go into the shower and toilet. Everything's the same in here except I've finally added some shower racks so they hold soap and shampoo and all that, and they're just hanging off suction cups, and I'm glad that I did do the recess there because it does save a lot of room and make it, you know, a bit more spacious in here. And I've also added a suction toilet roll holder recently actually. So I did these ages ago, but this one is more of a recent thing, and that's really handy. When we have a shower we just take that off and put it outside so it doesn't get wet. Another addition is these little squeegee things, and when we have a shower and the van doesn't want to drain, we just squeegee it into the drain, and that makes it a lot easier. That's just another hook up there for my little washing scrubbing thing. Other than that, the shower's still going really well. Actually, what I did do was I did redid a bit of silicone. So when I actually initially did the van build, when I did this bottom silicone here and around here and a little bit up the wall, I actually must have been cutting timber the same day, and this door was ajar and wood chips got in, so they got into some of the silicone, and obviously that's bad. So over time they're gonna, you know, eventually rot. So I just cut it all out in the pieces that the wood chips got in and just redid it. So make sure when you do it, don't get any dirt in your silicone, obviously. Right, next we're going underneath here. I've added a door rack here. That really helps. It's pretty messy in there, it's pretty packed at the moment, but yeah, that's how it is. So that rack I've added, I don't know if you saw the bin, but that's our little bin. That's our recycle bin, and we've actually got a fair bit of room in here that we could put stuff. But yeah, that's what it looks like under here now. And under the sink, I've added this rack here, so that holds tongs and, you know, utensils. So does this one, that holds utensils. Now we have more space in the middle for plates, bowls, chopping boards, and just random stuff, Tupperware. So that's what I've added there, and they made a massive difference. I really love them. What else have I done? There's a bunch of Tupperware toasters and blender and stuff down here, but I don't know if you saw that, but that's been in there since the van build, but that's a trap. I bought that from a little caravan shop, and that's really good. I actually ended up removing the reverse osmosis tank and filter for that, because I didn't realize at the time that reverse osmosis constantly pushes water through this membrane and has a waste. It's something like every litre of water that goes through, it keeps 2/3 and then wastes 1/3. So I couldn't figure out why all this water was draining all the time, and it happened to be that the reverse osmosis was constantly pushing through and wasting 1/3 of my water. So I quickly removed that when I found that out. So now I've just got the stage 3 water filters there, and they do fine. The fridge compressor's still going well, but what I actually ended up doing was adding a little thermostat. So the top number shows the temperature in here in Celsius, and the bottom number is what degrees will switch on that little computer fan back there, and that'll start spinning and trying to circulate. So that helps to sort of keep this area a bit colder. However, I will be honest, and being in the Northern Territory on 40-degree days, it just gets way too hot. I've got to figure out a better way and maybe put a vent grill on this cupboard door here and have a better fan to really suck air out, because at the moment that computer fan doesn't really move much air at all. Alright, so coming up here, I've installed this rack here. We now all have our cutlery up here, toothbrush, hand wash, dish soap, toothpaste and all that stuff, and our most used knife. Here's, you might have seen this already, but that's a chopping board. That's an offcut from the bench, and I turned it into a chopping board, and we ended up hanging on the wall, so that's really handy. Another one is this rack up here that I installed on the side of the overhead cupboard, and we just have like grocery bag things there, just dishes stuff. I'm really frothing on these little things you can buy from Bunnings, these little racks, because every little bit of storage extra you can have, it really makes your life that much easier when you live in a van. So these cupboards are the same. There's just like coffee and cups and stuff in that. Nothing too exciting. And this we ended up changing to our juicer cupboard. So that just holds all our juicer equipment in there. So the fridge is basically the same. Before I get in there, when we drove over like hectic Cairo roads for 150 kilometres in the Mereenie Loop, this fridge started to come out. There was tiny little screws that were holding this in. There was only 1, 2, 3, 4. So what I did was I changed them to these really long ones, 50mm screws, and put 3 in each side. So that shouldn't go anywhere now. That'll hold the fridge in really well. And actually what I'll do is switch to a video I recorded when I did it and show you what I've changed inside the fridge. Now the fridge drawers are okay, but it's a little bit annoying that when you slide them out, this is how they are, and they have no back on them and no sides. So when you slide things out, because sometimes you need to get to the back and it's kind of hard because it's full, things will slide off the back like that, and then when you go to push the drawer back in, it'll get jammed. So what I've decided to do was I bought from Bunnings some gutter guard, got some zip ties, and what I've done is just cut the gutter guard to size, zip tied it to the tray, and now things should stay in this area, and I'll show you what it looks like inside. So this is what it will be like inside. Normally there's a drawer that slots into that one above, but now when we pull that out, things won't come off the back here and slide down and block the drawer from coming down. So we'll be able to do that, and it will contain it all much better. And just a quick little demo. Now I can pull that drawer all the way out, nothing falls off the back. See that? Nothing wants to fall. So that works a lot better now. Next we'll go to the pantry. It's a bit of a mess in here at the moment. That's just where we hold rice and pasta. You've seen all that. The only differences really are that's our fruit basket. That's our oil basket and places where we put sauces and stuff, and that's where the safe sits. Pretty sure you guys know about that already, but yeah, that's where it is. So nothing's changed in our clothes cupboard, that's all the same, and these 3 drawers down the bottom, that's all the same. So we'll move on to the back now, and you might have seen this already, but we have a big map of Australia on our cupboard and showing like in highlighted where we're going and where we've been. So that's pretty cool. Inside, fair bit of change. Actually, that's a bit of a mess right now because we put all our like bedding and stuff on top of here, but I'll have to take that out to show you. But first, I had to move this shelf higher because I needed to fit the Weber in, and this used to be a little bit lower where those screw marks are, this shelf, and it didn't fit the Weber in, so I had to move that up. Alright, so now I've taken out everything, or most of the things in this bottom shelf. I installed this shelf because I wanted to make much more use of this area, and I've put this little hook here so that the shelf stays up. So this is just on hinges. There's hinges at the back, there's 3 of them, and under here I keep all my tools and stuff, so that's really handy. And I also put an actual floor on the bottom, so a flat floor, which keeps everything clean. This also I put here on either side and the back so that can support all the weight, because a lot of weight actually sits on this shelf here. That can go all the way up like that, and this is really handy because it holds it up while I have to get underneath. So we now have a camp stove for the fire, so now we can cook on the fire. We've used it a fair few times and we really enjoy it. Another thing we got is just a little mozzie zapper. That helps when there's a lot of mozzies or flies around and they get trapped in you, and you can just turn it on before you go to sleep, and they all sort of get attracted to that and get trapped and stuff. Actually, something else that I have done is upgraded the magnets. So these magnets here and the ones up there, they're now, I think they're 8 kilogram magnets or 4 kilogram, pretty sure. But yeah, they actually take a lot to, you got to kind of reef the door open because there's a lot of heavy stuff in here, and if you're going on bumpy roads and stuff, things will fly out and have flown out in the past. So I upgraded this back door and this door here just so that nothing flies out anymore. Okay, next is this table bolt here. So you guys know about my Lagom table, but I'm not sure if I showed you about this little bolt. I've tapped that in there, and why do I have this little bolt? Well, I'll show you in 2 seconds. The reason I have the bolt is because when this Lagom table is designed to be flipped up the other way, so when you twist this thing, it wants to come off. So by putting this bolt in here, I can move that as much as I want like that, and it won't slide down this part and fall off because that bolt's holding in. So that's the only reason I have the bolt. Super good table, love it, really recommend Lagom. Yeah, so that's the table. Okay, next we'll go into the back cupboard. This has always just been a bit of a storage place, but I have added some things. At the back down there is a second gas bottle that we have strapped in, and that's really handy because when we run out of gas on the outside, we just swap it over and there's no problems at all. I've added these back racks here as well, so that holds other stuff, and there's one there as well. That's just an oil drain pan. That's our laundry bag, which we hold up just from these hooks here, and I added another hook so we can hold like our dressing gowns and stuff, which we're obviously not going to be using now because it's too hot. These are two didgeridoo cases that I made out of PVC pipe with a lot of like foam on the inside so that when you're driving around they don't get damaged, and I strap them in there, so that's a new addition. Other than that, it just holds like chairs, our water pipes. There's 10 litres of backup water underneath there. Underneath this guitar there is 10 litres of backup diesel fuel as well. And this is going to be my favourite addition, but it's an electric skateboard holder. Just put a hook there, and that fits perfectly in there. Laurie bought me that for my birthday, the 27th, so that's probably my favourite addition of this entire cupboard. And obviously my surfboard is there. And on the back, that's where my skateboard hooks are bolted into. So moving on, we've recently just added LED strip here. Goes all the way along, and that's the controls here. It's the type of one where you can change colours. I'll do a bit of an overlay, but yeah, we've had fairy lights in the past. 2 times and they both failed, so we updated to that recently in Alice Springs, so we're really happy with that. Another good thing about it is that you can change colours, so you can have it to red, light or orange, and that's really good at night for bugs because they aren't really attracted to that. So yeah, we generally have it on red if we've got all the doors open and stuff like that, so we don't get mozzies and that in. Although you still get some, it's inevitable to get 1 or 2. Another thing that you might have seen is this heater. It's a double bar heater element, so you can either have 1 bar on or 2, 600 watts or 1200 watts. So we just plug that into the power point just there, and yeah, it definitely warms you up when you're in bed here, and yeah, you don't need it on for too long. Speaking of the heater, I actually picked up this foam from Bunnings a year or 2 ago when it was really cold and we were living in the van in winter, and cut it into the shape of the Max air fan. And they only go one way, but yeah, they just slot in like that, and they trap all the heat and everything in the van because heat rises and escapes out the Max air fans in winter. So yeah, it actually makes a massive difference. You'd be surprised of how warm, just by blocking those 2 Max air fans, because I've made an insert for both of them, of how warm it actually keeps it, especially when you use it in conjunction with the heater. And we store that all behind Laurie's chair, but I won't grab them out, but I've got 2 other big pieces there along with the other Max air fan one, and the 2 big pieces actually fill up that entire door here, so that in winter it is just completely like sealed back here, and it's super warm. So that's what we do when it's really cold. Moving on, when we travel we generally have it set up like that so that it's not bouncing around. But we actually recently updated the feet on the couch bed. So before, the feet were very like sort of stiff and they were very rigid, so that has resulted because when we leave it out as a bed and we're driving, it must rub a bit. So we put these really soft rubber feet on, and since then we haven't had any extra marks. So make sure you put really soft feet on so it doesn't rub into your vinyl floors. This has been here for ages. I don't know if you've seen this, but I added a hook there, and that hooks onto down there so that when we turn corners and stuff, these the mattresses don't slide off into the ground. So that's pretty much the only reason we have that hook. I've had this for ages as well, and that's just a latch which latches the entire bed down and keeps it secure so it doesn't shoot up or shoot out. But you can just open that like that. It's really packed to the rafters under here at the moment, but I've also updated or re-gassed this gas strut. So the whole time it just wasn't strong enough, and you'd be sort of really holding it up and it wasn't really doing its job as a gas strut. So I got a guy to put some more gas in it, and since then it actually stays up and does its job. Packed in here with a bunch of stuff. Had to do little repairs on the road, so you pick up things, but there's tools and wetsuits and stuff under there. Some of Laurie's knitting. I'll take this just out for just a minute, but the only thing really I've changed in here is I've put in this little ply board so that everything, all the electrical devices back here can breathe better and they're not like shoved up against with all this. So that's the only reason I put that in, so that nothing really comes into contact with the inverter and all that, just so that it can keep it all cool and right. Another thing that I finally got around to doing was actually hooking this light back up, and instead of hooking it back to the van starter battery, I just wired it into the house battery so that we weren't drawing power from that. So another thing, in this little cabinet here, the electrical cabinet, I added a pump switch and a safe switch. So that'll isolate the pump, and that's handy because we don't really want that on while we're driving, and that just isolates the safe 12 volt power so that it can turn the Wi-Fi router on and off. So that's handy. Other than that, I actually changed these solar breakers a long time ago, basically when I did the van build, so years ago, and I changed them from one complete module to separate ones, and they're NOARC 32 amp non-polarized solar breakers. Okay, so we're now making our way outside. You guys have seen these drop down tables before, but what I did add was an extra accessory power on, just so that I can plug my 12 volt air compressor in and pump up my back tyres on the road. I believe that dual USB was there in the van build. So on top here you can see the solar entries, and one night I actually backed up and hit this one here and it popped off, so I had to re-Sikaflex that on. Wasn't really much of an issue, but that's something that I've had to done since travelling. And during the van build shooting episode, you guys actually didn't see me put insulation in behind these door panels and up here, but I did, but I didn't record it, and a lot of you thought, why didn't you do that? But I did, I just didn't record it, so sorry for that. Okay, so I'm pretty sure that's everything inside the van. We're going to start going outside and underneath, but first I have this little outdoor sort of shower head. I'll explain that right now. So under the back left rear of the van, I've installed an outdoor tap actually, and that's just controlled by that. The pump's off at the moment, but that's the extra addition that I've put on, and the reason that I put that on was because when we want to clean like the juicer or something, or like a really dirty oily pan, or even use that shower hose out there to have an outdoor shower for whatever reason, or wash our feet, we can do that out here. So I really love this addition. It's probably one of my favourite things I've added to so far. Alright, now we're going underneath the van. So I did actually make a complete episode of plumbing updates, but one of them was I upgraded the tank mount system, and just quickly, it's now Unistrut and Booker rod. you can go and see the full video there and watch that in depth of what I did there. So that is the wire join of where I tapped into the initial plumbing supply, and off that goes and feeds that backdoor tap, which is what I showed you just before. And I'm not sure if I showed you guys this yet in the build or not, but that's a check valve, a one-way check valve, which only allows water to go that direction. And the reason I put that in is because when I didn't have it in, the pump would push pressure back through the mains line, back through this wire join, through here and into the tank, and it would just keep circulating and circulating. So I put that one-way check valve to stop that, and also this is just a ball valve to when I fill up from the city water flow, I just open that up, and that allows water to feed into the tank and fill it, and then when it's finished I just turn it off. A lot of you have also asked me about why I put the tank fill into the bottom. I guess a couple of reasons, but one, I couldn't really get up to the top very easily. That goes even way up further, and I couldn't do that because obviously I can't get in there. There's the chassis. Thought it would just be easy to put it there. And you guys have asked me questions like, does it still fill fine when you're filling from the bottom? And the answer is yes, no problem at all. I never have problems when we're using mains pressure, which is how this thing fills up anyway, from mains pressure. It pumps it in and there's no problem at all. The only time it's been really slow is when it's filling from, like, say, a water tank with not that much water pressure, and it does fill up slow, but it still fills up. So I added this pump filter long time ago, but that just filters out any water coming from the tank before it goes into the pump. And speaking of the pump, I've actually done a full video on updates on this, but in short, I've flipped the pump 180 around, and I've had to add these hoses to actually get it to the rigid line. I've had a lot of problems with the pump, but in short, I found out that the problem was because the pressure switch was getting dirt in it. I've fixed that now. I'll link that video in the cards, so go click on that to see how I fixed it. And I also added a tank strap, a pump strap on it, sorry, so that it doesn't vibrate around too crazy when you're driving on bumpy roads. And I'm pretty sure you guys have seen this check valve before, but that's the pump outlet line there, and that's just a check valve there so that when I'm connected to mains pressure can't push back into the pump. The pump already has actually a check valve built into it to stop that, but I thought I'd just put one there just to be extra safe to protect the pump. Another question you guys have asked me is the grey water tank here. You're draining into the bottom of the grey water tank. Does it drain? Sort of like just that question before with, does it fill the freshwater tank? The answer is yes, it does, because it's gravity and it's just filling it up, and it will just keep filling up, and I haven't had a problem yet. We basically leave it open all the time with that valve over there, so this thing's basically empty anyway. So yes, it does still drain. If you can put it up top, even better, but I was just worried that I wouldn't get enough fall, especially from this Hepfo one coming from the shower over there. That's why I put it down low, to get nice fall and nice drainage into the tank. I think the last thing that I'll talk about underneath here that has changed, but this honestly was done during or after the van build, but I might not have showed you, is this exhaust wrap here. So I wrapped the whole exhaust all the way down to there in exhaust wrap. I haven't had any problems with heat damaging the tank or the pipes or anything like that. It does get hot, but this exhaust wrap does an amazing job at stopping the heat extruding out. So yeah, that's another addition that I did a long time ago that I'm not really sure if I showed you. The thing that I did was actually replace this entire window, because the previous one had this like sliding mechanism, which was cool, but the lock mechanism on it was broken. And also the main reason I did it was because I had rust building up here and over here. You probably can see my shitty paint job there, but I had to cut all that rust out and do the best I could. So far it's going alright, but yeah, that window I actually prefer a lot more, so that's one addition. I won't get up there, but on the rear max air fan, one night it was raining and I had this tiny little bit of a leak coming through. So I investigated it and ended up just redoing all the silicon around the max air fan, like a lot of silicon this time. So yeah, the silicon sort of disintegrated in the sun. The weird thing was the front one was completely fine, but the back one was the one that actually was degraded by the sun. So I don't really know why, but I redid it all with really good silicon, roof and gutter stuff. So hopefully that should be not a problem in the future. I showed you this in another episode, but that is the solar diffuser that I never really got to show you guys, and that just is bolted onto the front panel so that air pressure doesn't build up underneath when we're driving and it doesn't rip all the panels off. So that's a very important part of the van, and I did a whole episode on that, so go check it out. I'll link it up there. Another thing I have added is this little gas bottle sort of gauge. It just shows you how much you've got, and we find that really handy just to get an idea of when we're going to be running out soon. And the last thing that I have to add is that we remove the Mozzie screens. I don't think they were actually in the van build, but we did have these magnetic Mozzie screens on the front and the back. And over time they sort of started to break and rip and stuff, so I ended up just removing them. They worked really good for a while, but yeah, once they're broken, they're broken. So that's everything. I believe that we've updated on the van since the van build. I hope it gives you a bit more insight of how it is today, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. So like, subscribe, and click the bell notification so you get updated when I do drop a video, which lately has been every single week. So excited to see you guys in the next one, and I'll see you there.